Sorry about the delay on that. We had some technical issues. Now, joining us here at El Pomar Natatorium for your University of Denver Pioneers versus BYU. Now, we are on round 2 of the women's 1 meter championship. 6 dives and that was
Betty Martin from Brigham Young. This is the last dive of round 2 for the women's 1 meter. Savannah Berry doing a forward 2.5 tuck, 2.4 degree of difficulty. Scores 6.5, 6. Up next, starting round 2 for the men's 3 meter, is Elijah Baker from BYU, doing a forward 2.5 pike with 1 full twist, 3.0. Scores 4, 3.5. Up next is Tripp from Denver, doing a forward 2.5 pike with 1 twist, 3.0 degree of difficulty. Scores 4 and 3. Up next is Ashton from BYU, doing a forward 2.5 pike with 1 twist, DD 3.0. Scores 5.5 and 5. Up next is Dakota Parker from Denver, doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, DD 2.8. And to explain, we only have 2 judges today, so the 2 scores will be, the third judge score will be the average between the first 2 judges, and that will be used to calculate the total. 7.5 across. Up next is Marti from BYU, doing a forward 3.5 pike, DD 3.1. Scores 6-7. Up next is Colin from Denver, doing a back 1.5 pike, DD 2.2. Scores 4, 4.5.
Up next, round 3 of the women's 1 meters with Tatum Brassfield from the University of Denver, doing a forward 1.5 with 1 full twist. Scores of 6.5, 6.5. Up next, Brooklyn from BYU doing a reverse 1.5 in a pike position. 2.4 difficulty.
Scores 6s across.
Sydney McCoy from the University of Denver doing a forward single with a double twist. Difficulty of 2.3.
Scores 5.5, 5.
Auburn with a reverse 1.5 in a pike position. Difficulty 2.4.
Scores 5.5, 5.5 for that.
Up next, Sophia from BYU doing a forward 1.5 with a full twist.
Zach, I'm curious how the mental preparation for a swim meet compares to a dive meet, because here at the University of Denver, the divers typically start a meet with a meditation and a lot of visualization. And I'm curious how that is different for how you hype yourself up for a swim meet.
That's a great question.
Scores 4.5.
Up next, Caitlin from DU doing a forward 1.5 with a double twist. Difficulty of 2.6. I would say visualization is big in swimming earlier on in your training. I'd say on meet day, I'm focused on getting as energetic as possible, you know, hyping myself up so that you can put all of your energy into your 1 or 2 races.
Scores are 5s across for Caitlin.
Up next, Betty Martin from BYU doing a reverse 1.5 in a tuck position.
That's interesting because for diving, sometimes you don't want to be too hyped before a meet. Really, it's all very personal, but sometimes if you get a little bit too excited, you can, you know, put too much power into it. You want to typically just do what you've practiced.
Up next, Savannah Berry with a reverse 1.5 in a pike position. What I would say to that is I think visualization's very important for the technical side.
Scores are 6.5 and 5.5 for Savannah.
Up next on the men's 3-meter, Elijah Baker from BYU doing a forward 3.5. What I would say is in swimming,
6s across.
the technique is important, but at the end of the day, it's a race. So you're really putting everything out there in 1 or 2 efforts throughout the day, where I imagine in diving, it's very technical, significantly more than swimming even. And that requires, you know, doing what you practiced over and over again.
This is Tripp doing a forward 3.5 tuck. And the scores are 6.5 and 6.
Those were 2.8 difficulty. Now on to Ashton Sparks from BYU doing a forward 3.5 in a pike position, DD of 3.1.
Yeah, I would say diving is a mix of technical and a lot of mental. You might be able to see on the live stream, there's a lot of divers pantomiming their dives in the background, practicing the motions that they're going to do in the air, practicing what they're going to see. Just trying to get into the right headspace and see in their mind the dive that they want to do. Scores are 3.5 and 3.5.
Up next, Dakota Parker from DU doing a forward 2.5 in a pike position, 2.4 difficulty. 'Cause when I'm racing, right, I'm thinking about how can I do like proper technique, but very much about speed. Whereas I don't know, I would be very scared to get up on the boards.
Scores are 6s.
Up next, Marty Riera from BYU doing a back 2.5 in a pike position. Difficulty 3.0.
Wow. Scores are 7 and 6.5.
And that brings us to the close of round 3, halfway through these first 2 boards. On the women's 1 meter, starting round 4, Tatum Brassfield from DU doing a back 1.5 in a pike position.
Scores are 4.5 and 4.
Up next, Brooklyn from BYU doing an inward 1.5 in a pike position. Difficulty of 2.4.
Scores 7, 7.
Sydney up next from DU doing a back 1.5 in a tuck position.
Scores are 6.5 and 6.5.
Auburn from BYU with a reverse 1.5 in a pike position. 2.4 DD.
Correction, a back 1.5 in the pike position.
This might be a game time change.
Another correction, an inward 1.5 in the pike position. Scores are 5.5 and 6.
Sophia from BYU, forward 1.5 somersault with a full twist. 2.2 difficulty.
Looks like this is also a change dive. Anything could happen here, folks.
Well, I can tell you that's not something you see in swimming.
Divers can change their dive on the board so long as they still complete all 5 categories in their list, and they can choose one category to repeat a dive in. Scores are 6 and 5.5.
Caitlin from DU doing a forward 1.5 with double twist, 2.6 DD. Do you have to communicate a change of your dives to the judges? Oh.
You do. You have to make sure the judges know before you start your dive. Scores are 7 and 7. Turns out nobody was changing dives, and we were looking at the wrong round, so everything's under control, folks.
Betty Martin from BYU doing an inward 1.5 pike, 2.4. Good catch, John.
Scores are 5 and 6.
Savannah from DU doing a back 1.5 in a pike position.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5. Starting out the 4th round of men's 3 meter is Elijah from BYU doing a back 2.5 tuck, 2.8. Scores are 5 and 5.
Up next, Trip with a reverse 2.5 in a pike position. Difficulty of 3.0.
Nasty dive. Scores are 7.5, 6.
Up next, Ashton from BYU doing a reverse 2.5 and a somersault in a pike position. Same dive as previous. Tied for the hardest dives we've seen so far today on the men's side.
Scores are 4.5, 2.5.
Dakota from DU doing an inward 1.5 in a pike position, 2.1 on 3 meter.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5.
Up next, Marty from BYU doing a forward 2.5 with a double twist in a pike position, 3.4 DD. This is the hardest dive we have seen attempted today.
This may be the hardest dive done today. Scores 3 and 3.
That's a lot of dive to fit in one jump.
That is a lot of dive. I have tried that dive, and I can tell you I didn't do it very well.
Up next on 1 meter, Tatum Brassfield from DU doing an inward 1.5 in a pike position.
Scores are 6.5, 6.
Up next, Brooklyn with a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist, 2.5 DD. After this, I'm also curious to hear, when you have a dive that doesn't go as well as you want, and this is probably, different for person to person, but how do you step back and reset for your next dive?
Usually it takes a couple seconds to note what you did wrong, talk to your coach, learn what you could do better in that dive next time, and then move on, focus on the next dive, and just focus on what you can do for your next dive, what you've noted in practice, what you've noted in other meets, and just focus one dive at a time.
Scores of 5 and 5. Up next, Sydney doing a reverse 1.5, 2.1 difficulty. I mean, that makes sense, and that's a skill that must be challenging to master. I know the mental game is large in swimming, but this just seems like a whole nother level.
Yeah, the difficulty is knowing that dive is going to affect your placing in the competition. Scores for Sydney are 6 and 6.
Up next, Aubryn, back single with a 1.5 twist, 2.3.
I said it earlier, diving is very much a mental game, and that is just one of the many aspects that goes into that. It's just moving on from a bad dive and doing what you can with the rest of the meet. Scores are 5.5, 5.5.
Sophia from BYU with a back 1.5 with a half twist, 2.1.
Scores are 5, 5.5.
Up next, Caitlin with a back 1.5 in a pike position.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5.
Up next, Betty from BYU doing a back 1.5 with a half twist. There's something else I haven't considered before, but swimming each of your races is self-contained. Obviously, the team score at the end of the day matters, but once you touch the wall, you can't change anything about that. But in diving, your score is still dependent on your next 5 dives.
5.5 and 5.5 for the scores.
And next up is Savannah with a back 1.5 with a half twist.
With diving, it's like, ideally, you'd like to think of your dives as separate, but that's not exactly the truth. Although it feels that way when meets, at very large meets, scores are 7 and 6.5 for Savannah.
On 3-meter men's, starting round 5, Elijah Baker with a reverse 2.5 in a tuck position, DD of 2.8. Well, and I can imagine a catch-up mindset would also not be appropriate in a diving context, right? You don't want to throw yourself off from your other dives. You still need to do those exactly how you have them planned.
Yeah, in diving, a lot of it feels like luck when it comes time for the meet. Scores are 4 and 4.5.
Up next, trip, inward 2.5 in tuck position, 2.7.
But it's funny that sometimes when you do a really bad dive and you kind of lose your place in the standings, that can actually it is different for each diver, but sometimes that can kind of give a freeing feeling of, you can relax your mind, and sometimes some of the best dives happen after some of the worst dives.
Almost because there's no pressure anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Scores are 6.5, 5.5.
Ashton from BYU doing an inward 2.5 in a pike position, 3.0 DD.
Scores are 7, 7.
Dakota Parker up next with a forward 2.5 with a full twist in a pike position, 3.0 difficulty.
Scores are 6, 5.5.
For our less seasoned fans at home, and especially for me, what goes into getting that score? I mean, I've heard small splash is good and you have to complete the dive, but what are all the aspects that go into that final score?
There are
Next, give me a second. Marty up next with a inward 2.5 in a pike position, 3.0 difficulty.
Essentially, there's three most important aspects to a dive, and that's the takeoff, your time in the air, and the entry. And so if you do a really messy dive, but you rip it, you still are not going to get a 10. Everything has to come together and look very nice and be controlled. Scores are 5.5 and 5.5.
Up next, your final round of the women's 1 meter with Tatum doing a back 1.5 with a half twist, 2.1 difficulty.
You want to have a nice presentation in the air on the board, and as well as not doing any unnecessary movements in the air that will fall outside of the lines of the ideal 10 dive. Scores are 7 and 6.5.
When you say on the board, so they're grading you before you even take off.
Definitely in your hurdle.
That was Brooklyn with a forward 1.5 with a full twist.
6.5s across for the scores.
Up next, Sydney from DU doing a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist, DD of 2.5.
Not so much when you're standing there, but
okay.
As soon as you start walking, that goes into the score.
And how would that apply for an inward or a back where you don't have that hurdle?
It applies much less, but judges can deduct points if you oscillate on the board for too long. There is a certain number. I don't know what it is, but it is pretty large. Scores are 5.5 and 5.5.
Up next, Aubryn with a forward 2.5, DD of 2.4.
But also overall presentation goes into the dive. So if you're standing and doing an inward, arm straight as opposed to bent, scores are 4, 4.5.
Up next, Sophia from BYU doing a forward 2.5.
Scores are 6 and 6.
Caitlin up next with a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist. DD of 2.5.
Scores are 6 and 6.
Betty with a forward 1.5 with a single twist. DD of 2.2.
Scores are 6 and 5.5. Closing out the last round of women's 1 meter is Savannah from Denver, doing a back somersault with 2.5 twists. DD of 2.7. And the scores are 5.5 and 5.5.
Now, starting the 6th round of the men's 3 meter, we have Elijah Baker doing a inward 2.5. DD of 2.7.
Scores are 5.5 and 5.
Trip from DU doing a back 2.5. DD of 2.8.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5.
Ashton from BYU with a inward 3.5. Difficulty of 3.4. I believe that is tied with the hardest rated dive of today.
That it is. That's a lot of dive. Scores are 5.5 and 4.5.
Dakota Parker from DU with a back 1.5 with a 2.5 twist. Difficulty of 2.8.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5.
Marti from BYU with a reverse 2.5 in a pike position. 3.0 DD.
Scores are 5.5, 6.
And that concludes your men's 3 meter and your women's 1 meter. The next round will start in 15 minutes, and we will bring you scores when we come back. And we are back with Betty Martin of BYU doing a reverse 2.5.
Correction, dive has been changed to a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists.
And as promised, we have scores from the first half on your women's 1 meter. In 8th place, Betty Martin with a score of 209.78. In 7th place, Auburn from BYU with a score of 220.2. In 6th place, Sophia from BYU with a score of 221.25. In 5th place, Tatum from DU with a score of 231.6. And now up on the board, we have Sydney McCoy doing a forward 2.5 in a pike position.
And scores for Betty for the last round was 5 and 5.5.
Now back to the 1 meter scores. Sydney McCoy from DU with a score of 238.58. Brooklyn from BYU with a score of 263.7. Caitlin from DU with a score of 268.95. And in first place, Savannah Berry from the University of Denver with a score of 270.53. Next up, Caitlin on 3 meter with a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist. DD of 2.4.
Scores for Caitlin, 6.5, 6.5.
Sophia from BYU up next with a forward 2.5 in a pike position. Now your results from the men's 3 meter. In 5th place, Elijah Baker from BYU with a 240.38. In 4th place from Ashton Sparks from BYU, a score of 272.55. In 3rd place from DU, Trip Gregory with a score of 294.75. In 2nd place, Dakota Parker from DU with a score of 297.90. And taking your first place, Marty Riera from BYU with a score on 3 meter of 309.30.
Scores for Sophia are 5 and 4.5.
Up next, Savannah Berry, DU, inward 2.5. DD of 2.7.
Scores for Savannah are 6.5 and 6.5.
Brooklyn from BYU doing a forward 2.5 in a pike position. DD of 2.4.
Scores 6.5, 7.
Auburn from BYU with the same dive.
Scores are 6, 6.
And a three-peat for this dive, Tatum Brasfield from DU also doing the forward 2.5 in a pike position.
Scores are 6.5, 7. And kicking off the men's 1 meter is Ashton from BYU doing a forward 2.5 pike, 2.6 degree of difficulty. Scores are 5.5, 6. Up next is Dakota Parker from Denver doing a back 2.5 tuck, DD of 3.0. Scores are 5.5, 6. Very nice execution of that dive.
Elijah Baker from BYU with a forward 2.5 in the pike position. DD of 2.6.
Scores are 5.5, 5.5. Up next is Colin from Denver, doing an inward 1.5 pike, 2.4. Scores are 7 and 7. And next up is Marty from BYU doing a forward 2.5 pike, 2.6. Scores are 7 and 7. Up next is Tripp from Denver, doing a gainer 1.5 pike, 2.4 degree of difficulty. Scores are 7.5, 7.5.
Starting round 2, Betty Martin from BYU with a back 2.5 in a tuck position, 2.8 DD.
Scores are 4.5, 4.5. And next up is Sydney from Denver, doing an inward 2.5 tuck, 2.7. Scores are 6.5 and 5.5. Up next is Caitlin from Denver, doing a forward 3.5 tuck, 2.8. If you want to see how fast Caitlin can spin, this is the dive to watch. Scores are 4.5, 4.5.
Up next, Sophia from BYU with a back 2.5 in a tuck position, difficulty of 2.8. Question for you, John. How do you not get dizzy when you're spinning that fast?
Could be a touch of fear, keeping you alert. Could be really, 3.5. It's hard to keep track of, but getting dizzy isn't so much a problem. But it is easy to get lost when you just see the blur of the water. But really, you're trying to count the water, 1, 2, 3, and then come out. There's a lot of finesse and technique and muscle memory to it. Scores are 6 and 6.
Savannah up next with a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5. And up next is Brooklyn from BYU doing a back 1.5 pike. DD of 2.2. Scores are 4 and 3.5. Up next is Auburn from BYU doing a back 2.5 tuck, 2.8 degree of difficulty. Scores are 5, 5. Finishing out the second round of women's 3 meter is Tatum from Denver doing the same dive, a back 2.5 tuck, 2.8. Scores are 4 and 4. Kicking off the second round of men's 1 meter is Ashton from BYU, doing a forward 3.5 tuck, 3.0. My mom calls this dive a lot of flips. Scores are 5.5, 5.5.
I assume a lot of flips is the official name as well.
It's the unofficial official name.
Up next, Dakota with a reverse 2.5 in a tuck position, 3.0 difficulty.
The unofficial name for this dive is very scary. Nicely done by Dakota.
I think
Scores are 5.5 and 6.
I think the unofficial name for diving as a sport should be very scary.
That I would concur with. Scary fun, sometimes.
Which part's the sometimes, or is that up to interpretation?
Oh man, you know they're both there all the time actually. This is Elijah from BYU doing a back 1.5 pike, 2.3. Scores are 4.5, 5. Up next is Colin from Denver doing the same dive, a back 1.5 pike, 2.3. Scores are 4, 3.5. Marty from BYU up next with a gainer 2.5 tuck, 3.0. Scores are 7-7. Trip from Denver up next with the same dive, a gainer 2.5 tuck, 3.0. Scores are 7-7.
And round 3, Betty Martin from BYU doing a reverse 2.5 in a tuck position, DD of 2.8.
Scores are 4, 3.5. And next up is Sydney from Denver doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, 2.5 degree of difficulty. Scores are 6 and 5. Next up is Caitlin from Denver doing the same dive, a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, 2.5. Scores are 4.5, 5.5. Next up, Sophia from BYU doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, 2.8. Scores are 5, 5.5. Up next is Savannah from Denver doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, DD 2.8. Scores are 4, 4.5. Brooklyn from BYU up next doing a gainer 1.5 pike, 2.3. Scores are 6, 5.5. And up next is Auburn from BYU doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, DD of 2.8. You'll notice there are a lot of gainers in the third round. A typical dive structure is starting with a dive you're confident with and ending with dive you're confident with. And the mess happens in the middle. The fear and sadness happens in the middle. Scores are 4-4. Finishing out the third round is Tatum from Denver, doing the same dive, a gainer 2.5 tuck, DD of 2.8. Really excellent start on that dive. Scores are 6.5 and 6. Starting the third round of men's 1 meter is Ashton from BYU doing a back 2.5 tuck, 3.0. Scores are 5 and 5. Dakota up next from Denver doing a forward 2.5 pike, DD of 2.6. Scores are 6-6. Elijah from BYU up next doing a gainer 1.5 pike, 2.4. Scores are 5.5, 6. Colin up next doing a forward 2.5 pike, 2.6. Pay attention to the lateral bubbles that arise after Colin enters the water. There's a lot of work that's hidden underwater in diving. Scores for Colin are 7 and 7. Those bubbles come because divers hit the water and swim immediately as soon as they enter the water and pike their body down, what's known as a pike save, in order to stop some of the bubbles. This is Marty from BYU doing an inward 2.5 tuck, DD of 3.1. Scores are 5, 4.5. Tripp from Denver up next doing a forward 2.5 pike, DD of 2.6. Wow. Scores are 7.5, 7.5. I don't think it's possible to make less of a splash than that on a dive. Starting the fourth round of women's 3 meter is Betty from BYU doing a forward 2.5 pike, DD of 2.4. Scores are 6, 5.5. And next up is Sydney from Denver doing a back 2.5 tuck, 2.8 DD. The way that diving is scored is they'll take the middle 3 judge scores, add those up, and then multiply that by the degree of difficulty. So higher degrees of difficulties will give you more points on a dive, and that's why there is a risk and reward to doing easier dives for higher scores or doing harder dives for lower scores. Scores 5 and 4.5. Caitlin up next from Denver, doing a gainer 2.5 pike, 3.0. Scores are 6.5, 6. And Sophia from BYU up next, doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, DD of 2.5. Scores are 5.5, 5.5. Up next is Savannah from Denver doing a back 2.5 tuck, DD of 2.8. Scores are 7 and 7. Up next is Brooklyn from BYU doing an inward 2.5 tuck, 2.7 degree of difficulty. Scores are 6.5, 7. Up next is Auburn doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twist, DD of 2.4. Scores are 6, 6. Closing out the 4th round of women's 3 meter is Tatum from Denver doing an inward 1.5 pike, DD of 2.1. Scores are 6.5, 6.5. And starting the fourth round of men's 1 meter is Ashton from BYU doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, DD of 3.0. Scores are 3.5, 3.5. Dakota from Denver up next with an inward 1.5 pike, 2.4 degree of difficulty. Scores are 6.5, 6. Elijah up next from BYU, doing the same dive in inward 1.5 pike, 2.4. Scores are 4.5, 4. Colin from Denver up next, doing a gainer 2.5 tuck, 3.0 degree of difficulty. Scores are 5 and 5. Marty from BYU up next with a gainer 1.5 with 1.5 twists, DD of 2.6. Scores are 6.5, 7. Up next is Tripp from Denver doing an inward 1.5 pike, DD of 2.4. Scores are 7, 6.5. And starting the fifth round of women's 3 meter is Betty from BYU doing an inward 2.5 tuck with a DD of 2.7. Scores are 4 and 5. Next up is Sydney from Denver doing a gainer 1.5 tuck, DD of 2.0. Scores are 4 and 4. Caitlin from Denver up next with a back 2.5 pike, DD of 3.0. Scores are 6 and 5. Up next, Sophia from BYU doing an inward 2.5 tuck, DD of 2.7. Scores are 5 and 4. Up next, Savannah from Denver doing a forward 2.5 pike, DD of 2.4. Scores are 7s across. Up next is Brooklyn from BYU, doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, DD of 2.5. Scores are 6, 5.5. Up next, Auburn from BYU doing an inward 2.5 tuck, 2.7.
Connected.
Scores are 4, 3. Closing out the 5th round of women's 3 meter is Tatum from Denver, doing the same dive, an inward 2.5 tuck, 2.7 DD. Scores are 5.5, 4.5. And starting the 5th round of men's 1 meter is Ashton from BYU, doing an inward 2.5 tuck, 3.1. Scores are 5 and 5. Dakota up next from Denver, doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, DD of 2.6. Scores are 6.5, 6.5. Elijah up next from BYU, doing an inward 2.5 tuck, DD of 3.1. Scores are 4, 2.5. Next, Colin from Denver, doing an inward 2.5 tuck, 3.1. Scores are 5.5, 5.5. Marty from BYU up next, doing a gainer 1.5 with 2.5 twists, DD of 3.0. Scores are 6.5, 6. Tripp from Denver closing out the 5th round of men's 1 meter with a back 1.5 pike, DD of 2.3. You'll notice Tripp will kick out straight with his hands kind of where his pockets are. That's a motion we call an anchor, where that will help stop the rotation of the dive before he reaches back for the entry. Scores are 6 and 6. Starting the last round of women's 3 meter is Betty from BYU with a forward 1.5 with a full twist, DD of 2.1. Scores are 4.5, 5.5. Next up is Sydney from Denver, doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists, DD of 2.4. Scores are 5.5, 5.5. Caitlin from Denver up next with an inward 2.5 tuck, DD of 2.7. Scores are 6 and 5.5. Next up is Sophia from BYU, doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists, DD of 2.4. Scores are 5-5. Savannah up next from Denver, doing a back 1.5 with 2.5 twists. DD of 2.8. Scores are 4-4. Brooklyn from BYU up next, doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists. DD of 2.4. Scores 5.5, 6. Next up is Auburn from BYU, doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists. DD of 2.5. Scores are 5.5, 5.
Up next, Tatum with a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists. 2.4 DD.
Scores are 7, 6.5.
And that concludes our diving on the women's side. Now for round 6 of the men's 1 meter, starting with Ashton. Forward 1.5 somersault with a double twist.
Scores are 4.5, 4.5. Dakota up next from Denver, doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists. 2.5. Scores are 6-7.
Up next, Elijah from BYU with a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists. DD of 2.5.
Scores are 4-4.
Colin up next with a forward 2.5 with a twist in a pike position. 3.2 DD.
Scores are 2 and 2.
Marty up next with a back 1.5 in a pike position. DD of 2.3.
Scores are 6.5, 6.5.
And your final dive of the day, Chip Gregory from DU with a back 1.5 with a half twist, 2.1 difficulty.
Scores are 7s across. I don't know where that splash went, but it wasn't there.
That concludes the diving for DU versus BYU today. We will be back shortly. I believe at the beginning of swimming, we will have the diving scores to announce. In the meantime, thank you, John, for joining us.
Of course.
And I will send us to a break. Should be somewhere between 10 or 15 minutes.
1, 2, 3, test, test, 1, 2, 3, microphone check, microphone check, microphone check, test, test, 1, 2, 3, test, test, 1, 2, 3, test, test, 1, 2, 3, microphone check. Are we good to go? Everything. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, the BYU Cougars are coming off their Christmas training trip to Hawaii. That's a long flight and a big change in sea level, probably going from about 30 feet above sea level to the University of Denver, where the air is rare, coming in at 5,300 square feet. The Cougars are a Big 12 powerhouse. For those of you who follow college athletics, you know that the Big 12 has recently undergone a lot of changes, with perennial conference winner, University of Texas Austin, moving to the Southeast Conference. BYU and ASU have stepped in to fill the hole left by the departure of the Longhorns. University of Denver will also be going through their own conference change here in the next couple of years as all the athletic teams move to the West Coast Athletic Conference. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready for your first event of the day. That is the women's 200-yard medley relay. Mr. Referee.
Disconnected.
This is the shorter of the two medley relays as opposed to the 400 medley relay. It's a 50 of each stroke. In the water, we have Glass, Bay, Hulse, Kohler, and Reichner out of BYU in lane 7 rounds out our field. With some strong underwater butterfly kicks coming on off that wall, it looks like we have University of Denver's A is going to go in the water first. In the water, we have our breaststrokers. In lane 3, that is Knoll. In lane 4, that's Winter. Lane 5, Warnick. Lane 6, Maloney. And lane 7 is Johnson. Pioneers still looking strong out of lane 4, although it looks like both lane 3 and 5 are making a big move on the breaststroke here. We'll see who can keep that lead going into the butterfly leg. In the water now, we have our butterflyers. That's Merrick, Saxman, Ellison, Rachenbun, and Scoville. We're looking for some really strong butterfly kicks coming off this wall, so who can go as far as they can, get close to that 15 meters. And a real strong breakout from the University of Denver A team coming into the final leg. That was an excellent butterfly split. Looks like she threw down a 23.52. That's a really strong split in the butterfly. Looking really strong coming into this last leg. We'll see if BYU can challenge. It looks like University of Denver is going to hold on strong here, bringing on that strong kick. We'll see what time they put up. And that is the University of Denver A team, splitting a 140.19. BYU's freestyler put up a real strong effort there with a 22.2. Not enough quite to close that gap as the University of Denver A team takes the win. We do have a disqualification. Lane 7 was disqualified for a false start. ladies and gentlemen, next we have event 2, the men's 200-yard medley relay. Mr. Referee. In the water now, we have our backstrokers in lane 3, that's Eliason, lanes 4, Collins, lanes 5, Kleinman, lane 6, Simons, and lane 7, Burke. And it looks like that's lane 5, our 50 backstroker coming in to take the lead. That's the BYU A team. Real strong swim, 21:49, our only swimmer under 21. Everyone else is going to be in the 22 mid to 22 high range. We'll see if DU's breaststroker can make up some ground here. Still looking strong in lane 5. That is the BYU A team. In the water right now, we have Vandersluis, Campbell, Edsel, Morton, and Edelsons changing off to our butterflyers. Our butterflyers today are going to be Aina, McClellan, Edwards, Jones, and Stridham. BYU still looking really strong in lane 4. It looks like DU's A team has made a move on BYU's B team. We'll see if they can overtake them in this final leg. With another strong split of 21:03, that's BYU's A team. The fastest split of the day, however, goes to DU's A team with a 20.94, being the only swimmer to crack that 21 barrier. In the water now, we have Ballard, Pantic, Bonnet, Stone, and Plum. We have a real close race here for second. It is the BYU A team, but in second, it's going to be the DU A team, just barely touching out the BYU B team, with splits of 19.94 and 19.89. What's that? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new pool record in the men's 200-yard medley relay. Congratulations to the BYU Cougars for setting the standard for the El Pomar Natatorium. We have event 3, the women's 1,000-yard freestyle. Mr. Referee. So ladies and gentlemen, it does appear that BYU has set a pool record, breaking their own pool record from 2 years ago at this meet. Congratulations to the Cougars. We're going to have a little bit of a change of pace here as we start the 1,000 freestyles, the distance events, going from the 200 medley relay to the second longest of NC2A events, followed only by the 1650 freestyle. We have some great athletes in this event today. In lane 2, we have Nika Spihar from your Denver Pioneers. Lane 3, Melissa Turlia from BYU. Lane 4, Genevieve Franklin from your University of Denver Pioneers. Lane 5, Cher Patrick from BYU. And lane 6, rounding out your field, is Riley Page. Looks like our top times of the year so far have come out of lane 3 and lane 5. Melissa's best time, according to my information, is a 10:04:51, followed by Cher Patrick going at 10:08. Paige Riley has the top time for your Denver Pioneers so far this year with a 10:14. But the last 2 dual meets have seen Genevieve Franklin, who's swimming out of lane 4, post some really strong swims for the wins. hello to our at-home audience. Hello, all of you observing from internet land. Coming to you from the booth here at El Pomar Natatorium, my name is Darrigan Silver. I am a faculty member at the University of Denver and a USA swimming official, and it's my pleasure to be your announcer today. I am joined in the broadcast booth by University of Denver Pioneer alumni and fantastic technician,
Zach Baylor. Been trying to get these live streams up and going for all our awesome fans at home, making sure you get to see swimming every time people are racing at El Pomar Natatorium.
We really appreciate you tuning in today, and we're happy to bring you this event. We will be trying to provide color commentary and play-by-play and keep you entertained at home. Looks like we have a nice battle shaping up in the middle of the pool here as we approach the 400. We want to keep our eye not just on the running time, but we want to keep our eye on their splits to see who's going to make a move as we approach that back half. It looks like right now our swimmers are pretty well bunched up. Turlia just threw down a 31.7, but in lane 4 you can see Alicia Franklin is starting to making a move as she throws down a 31.3. But our fastest split is going to go to BYU in lane 5. That's Patrick with a 31.18. And Riley also throwing down a really strong 31.4. As we approach the 500 mark, we want to see who starts to make a move, who's going to bring those legs into their race, and who's keeping their stroke nice and strong.
And as promised, I have the results from the second board of today's diving competition. For the women's 3-meter, in 8th place we had Betty Martin from BYU scoring 216.45. In 7th place, Bryn Ordina from BYU with a 229.73. In 6th place, Sydney McCoy from DU with a score of 234.75. In 5th place, Sophia de Boer from BYU with a score of 242.40. In 4th place, Brooklyn Gukritz from BYU with a score of 252.23. In 3rd place, Tatum Brasfield with a score of 264.75. And your top two in just a second here is
just as we promised, ladies and gentlemen, this is shaping up to be a great race. Genevieve Franklin has been on a bit of a tear the last few dual meets. She's been posting really strong season best times. You can see here that she started to make her move at the 550, throwing down a 31.2. Genevieve typically has very strong back half races, frequently negative splitting. For those of you at home and those of you here in the audience who don't know what that means the back half of your race is faster than the first. You can see she's slowly starting to bring on that kick already at the 600 mark, but it looks like Patrick is going to make a move with her. And indeed, Patrick turns at 31.4 to Franklin's 31.7. We have a great race shaping up here in the middle of the pool. We'll see who can hang on in this back half, especially as I mentioned at 5,300 feet above sea level. The second half of this 1,000 can be real painful for some athletes.
And your top two from the 3-meter women's, Caitlin Calvary from DU in 2nd place with a 274.43, just beaten out by Savannah Berry in 1st place from DU with a total of 275.93.
It looks like Patrick has responded to that challenge from Franklin. Franklin threw down a 31.3, but Patrick responded with her own 31.29. You can see the two swimmers have a little bit different technique here. Genevieve has a little bit of a longer stroke and then has that driving kick, whereas you can see that Patrick has that turnover that she's trying to go to separate herself. And it's a 31.5 for Patrick, but Franklin's hanging right in there with a 31.7. Not to be outdone, Spihar in lane 1 throws down her own 31.6. This looks like it's going to be a great back half race here as our swimmers really gear up to bring it home.
And results for your men's 1 meter championship. In 6th place, Elijah Baker from BYU with a score of 207.9. In 5th place, Colin Brewer from the University of Denver with a score of 246.23. In 4th place, Ashton Sparks from BYU with a score of 252.45. In 3rd place, Dakota Parker from DU with a 294.75. And your top two, Tripp Gregory with a score of 309.6 from your University of Denver. And in 1st place, Marty Riera from BYU with a 315.53.
And here comes Franklin as we approach the 800, making her move and throwing down a 31.3. We see her find that other gear. Patrick hanging in there with a 31.6. With a 200 left, it really looks like a battle here in the middle of the pool. We'll see who can bring it home, who has the most left in the tank. And that's Genevieve Franklin throwing down with a 31 flat. Patrick does respond with a 31.2, so she's picked up her own pace. It looks like both swimmers here are looking to back half the race and really digging down to see who can bring it home. Again, you can see we have two different techniques going on here. Patrick with the higher turnover, the higher tempo, although you can see her now bringing in her legs. Franklin is going to her legs as well and bringing on a 6-speed kick, keeping a little bit longer stroke as we come into the wall. 18.8 to 18.7. This is a nail biter. Patrick has responded with her own 31 flat. They're both trying to kick it into the next gear here. We'll see if one of them can drop down into the 30-point high range as we get ready for our final 100. With the 50 left, Patrick throws in a 30.6. Franklin, not to be outdone, is a 30.8. We'll see who has it left in their tank as they come into the last 25. It looks like Patrick flips slightly early, but here comes Franklin bringing on that kick. Both swimmers digging deep. Who's it gonna be? I can't tell from my angle. It's a dead heat. And bringing home the win, it is Patrick, anchoring in a 29.17 for a time of 10:18.55. You see that Franklin had the faster split on that last 50 with a 28.97, wasn't quite able to take it over. This is my time to remind you that we are at 5,300 square feet, and the NC2A does recognize altitude conversions. So these swimmers just threw up some great times, but they're even faster once we factor in that altitude conversion. Next up, we have event 4, the men's 1,000 freestyle. Mr. Referee. In the water for event 4, in lane 3, we have Easton Mouser. Lane 4, Finn Holbridge. Lane 5, Tanner Nelson. And lane 6, Max O'Neill. On paper here, the BYU distance swimmers come in with quite the advantage in their current best times for the season, with Mouser posting a 9:09.76 and Nelson posting a 9:07.63. We'll see if that's the race as it shapes up before us. As we approach the 500 freestyle, as we predicted, we have the two BYU swimmers who come in with much faster seed times than their DU counterparts, putting some distance between them and our two DU athletes. Flipping first in a 4:33, we have Nelson. He's been throwing down some 27 highs. That looks like he's going to settle in at 28 flat there. Mouser just posted his 28.2 for a 4:36.78. Holbridge is actually splitting pretty well here, holding 28 highs for a 4:41.97. And then in fourth place is O'Neill, who just put up a 4:46.44 at the halfway point. You can see most of our athletes here have that nice long distance freestyle stroke, bringing in those legs slowly but surely. We are not quite seeing the 6-beat kick we saw out of the ladies yet towards the end of their race, but we are seeing them starting to add some kick to their strokes here. The pool record in this event was recently set by a DU club swimmer, Trevin Kraus, You'll see up on the board, it's technically listed as Dylan Butch as a 9:17 from 2014. But 15-year-old Trevin Krause actually just in November of this year broke that pool record. So what you're seeing on the wall is not accurate. As we approach the 800 mark, you can see all of our athletes' splits have started to creep up. We are now in the 28 high range to the 29 row range. Nelson throws down a 28.98 for a split of 7:23.89. Mouser actually with a little bit faster split there, 29.69, and he's going to post a 7:29.27 at our 800 mark. Holgridge has a 28.99, just barely keeping under the 29 mark. And then O'Neill in fourth place just throws down a 29.43. He's at the 7:42.50 mark. We have some pretty strong swims going on here in the 1,000 free for mid-January at altitude. Let's see what they can do in these last few yards before the race is over. Unlike the ladies, it appears that BYU is going to comfortably take both first and second in this event. Coming in at our last 25, Nelson looking very strong, adding a little bit of those legs. He's going to post a 9:16.40, a really strong time for altitude for mid-January. Coming in second is Mouser with a 9:22.64. In third place from your Denver Pioneers is going to be Holgridge with a time of 9:31.05. And rounding out our field in lane 6, we have Max O'Neill posting a 9:38.60. Some really excellent swims by our athletes for this time of year. Thank you, gentlemen. Please clear the pool. Event 5, women's 200-yard freestyle. Mr. Referee. In the water, we have our only heat of women's 200 yards freestyle. In lane 1 from BYU, we have Jacqueline Gruber. Lane 2 from University of Denver, we have Sienna Nitke. Lane 3 from BYU, Victoria Schreiber. Lane 4, your pioneer swimmer, Samantha Sinvol. Lane 5, Haley Tiffany, BYU. Lane 6, Izzy Burton, DU. Lane 7, Kara Martinson, BYU. And lane 8, rounding out your field, is Lily Zippel from the University of Denver Pioneers. 200 free is always an interesting race. It's where the distance freestylers meet the sprint freestylers in the middle, and you can see a lot of different strategies here. Looks like Tiffany is taking it out real strong. She's already added that big 6-feet kick, but it looks like Samantha Sinsville in lane 4 is trying to shift into another gear to match her. Coming into this event, it does look like Haley has the fastest time of the field, posting a 1:47.25. Although Samantha Sinsville is not far behind in a 1:49.76. We'll see how this race shapes up as we enter the back half. The all-important third 50. Who's willing to make a move with another 50 left? Who is willing to put it all out there and see if they can hold on? It does look like that's going to be Haley Tiffany, splitting at 27.89 for a 1:20.2. Schreiber in lane 3 making a move on Sinsville in lane 4 with a 28.12. Looks like we're going to have a real tight race. Sinsville is just 1/100th of a second ahead of Schreiber. It does look like Schreiber is adding in that big kick here, that 6-feet kick that we saw from our distance freestylers. It looks like we may have a BYU 1-2 going on here. It is. That's going to be Tiffany's posting a 1:48.87, followed by Schreiber with a 1:49.05. Rounding out third place is your Denver Pioneers, Samantha Sinsvall, who puts up a very strong 1:50.35. Some excellent times at altitude for mid-January. Thank you, athletes. Ladies, please clear the pool. Event 6, the men's 200-yard freestyle. Mr. Referee. In the water for the men's 200 freestyle, lane 1, Jonah Ho. Lane 2, Kurt Owens. Lane 3, Ethan Purcell. Lane 4, Pierce Brickerton. Lane 5, Darwin Anderson. Lane 6, Dylan Mess. And lane 7, Luca Fiera. Looks like everyone here is taking it out real strong on this first 50. We're throwing down some very fast splits. Lane 5, that's Anderson with a 22.77, followed by Bickerton in lane 4 with a 22.9. Nobody's waiting today. Everyone's jumping on that gas early. We'll see if that's going to cost anybody on the back half, or if they have a plan going into this. Again, in lane 5, it looks like Anderson really making a move on that second 50. Throws down a 24.27, followed by Bickerton in a 24.92. Those legs are already coming on with great big 6-feet kicks. We'll see if Anderson is going to take this wire to wire, or if anybody can challenge him. Bickerton is not going away, making a move on that third 50. He wants to be part of this party. That's a 25.17, followed by a 25.32. Not to be outdone in lane 7, keep your eye on Fiera. He also throws down a 25.1. We'll see if he can catch Bickerton on this last lap. Bickerton is making his own move here, challenging Anderson in lane 5. But here comes Fiera. And in lane 5, that's going to be Anderson getting first. Lane 2, sneaking with some outside smoke, and a 1:38.78 is Fiera. And taking third in lane 4 from your University of Denver Pioneers is Bickerton. Those are some real strong swims for this time of year, right on their season bests. And again, with the altitude conversion, we might be seeing some best times throwing down here in the middle of January. That's some impressive swims coming off of a hard winter training. Thank you, athletes. Event 7, women's 100-yard backstroke. Mr. Referee. And in the water, lady backstrokers. In lane 2, Maria Del Monte. Lane 3, Ella Glass. Lane 4, Allie Bay. Lane 5, Katja Holst. Lane 6, Darian Kohler. And lane 7, Annie Reichard. Allie Bay had a really strong opening 50 backstroke on that 200 medley relay. We'll see if she can keep that up on that 100. Some great butterfly kicks coming off that wall, taking her almost 15 meters. She's going to split a 26.71. She again is taking that lead again with some really strong backstrokes, some underwater backstrokes, going almost a full 15 meters. We'll see if she can do that again coming off this final wall. Not going quite as far, but still holding the lead. That is Allie Bay from your University of Denver Pioneers. It looks like we may have a 1-2 Denver swim here. Yes! Kohler comes through on the last 25, outsplitting the field in a 28.36 to post a 55.66 and sneak in there for second. So it's Allie Beal in first with a 55.5. Kohler in second with that real strong last 25 with a 55.66, followed by the BYU Cougars in a 55.84. Event 8, men's 100-yard backstroke. Mr. Referee. Lane 1, Peyton Plum. Lane 2, Mason Broom. Lane 3, Andrew Eliason. Lane 4, Quinn Collins. Lane 5, Tanner Edwards. Lane 6, Liam Simons. Lane 7, Jack Burke. Lane 7, Noah Laird. We just saw Allie Bay give a clinic in how to use your butterfly kicks to accelerate. We'll see what the boys do here. And out first in a very strong 22.97. That's going to be Tanner Edwards from BYU. He is also using those underwater butterfly kicks to his advantage. Coming into this wall, we'll see if he can go 15 meters again. Yes, getting out to at least 12 yards there. That's a great underwater kick by Edwards. He's going to take this wire to wire in a time of 48.39. That's pretty close to his season best, which is 47.59. Coming in second in lane 3, also from BYU, is Eliason with a 49.23. Breaking up the BYU sweep, however, is going to be your own Quinn Collins in lane 4, who posts a 49.37. Event 9, Women's 100-yard breaststroke. Mr. Referee. In the water for the women's 100 breast, lane 2 from your University of Denver Pioneers, Zoe Lynch. Lane 3, Brinley Knoll. Lane 4, Tayana Winter. Lane 5, Lucy Warnick. Lane 6, Peyton Mawalny. And lane 7, Maddie Johnson. Looks like we're a pretty dead heat coming into this first 50. Everyone's looking really strong. It's going to be hard to tell who has the lead here. It looks like turning first in 29.6 is going to be Warnick from BYU. Right behind her is Winter at a 29.84. Warnick appears to be accelerating on this third 25, putting some distance between her and Winter. Winter looking for that second gear. We have Maloney coming up in lane 6, also looking to see if they can find that second gear, but it does look like it's going to be Warnick from BYU taking it comfortably in a 101.70. Followed in second with a 103.34 is Winter. Rounding out the top 3 is Maloney from DU. So it looks like BU does take the win, but DU is going to pick up second and third. According to my notes, that is Warnick's best time on the year, posting a 101.70. So we're seeing some fast swimming here, despite the fact that we're coming off of winter training. And the BYU Cougars seem to be handling that transition from sea level to altitude pretty well. Event 10, men's 100-yard breaststroke. Mr. Referee. We have a full field for you today with all 8 lanes having swimmers in them for the men's 100 breaststroke. Lane 1, Max Hyman. Lane 2, Cody Police. Lane 3, Will Bonnet. Lane 4, Peter Campbell. Lane 5, Peter Etzel. Lane 6, Nico Morton. Lane 7, Evan Vandersloos. And lane 8, Sam Baker. Oh, it is a dead heat from where I'm sitting. It does look like we have 2 swimmers. We have Hyman in lane 1 who took it out 25.2. Closely by Campbell in lane 4 with a 25.4, but leading your way does appear to be Etzel in lane 5 with a 25.0. Just like his female counterparts, it looks like the BYU swimmers may move on the 25. We may be looking at a 1-2-3 BYU sweep here. We'll see if DU can break it up. Coming in first in lane 5, it is Etzel with a 53.46, and second in lane 1, 53.67 is Kleinman. We were able to, the Denver Pioneers were able to break up that 1-2-3 sweep. Coming in third, it is Campbell with a 54.58 out of lane 4. Thank you, gentlemen. Event 11, women's 200-yard butterfly. Mr. Referee. Lane 2, Devin Burnett. Lane 3, Sarah Ellison. Lane 4, Sabrina Rachabun. Lane 5, Lucy Merrick. Lane 6, Mina Ada Soliker. Lane 7,